The content here is for informational purpose only and should not be taken as legal, business, or tax advice or be used to evaluate any investment of security and is not directed at any investor or potential investor in any AlphaSwap podcasts.
Hello and welcome everyone. I'm King Uy and this is the AlphaSwap podcast. Every week we'll be discussing a top investment idea from the platform and have an in-depth conversation with the user who posted the idea. You can learn more and join our community at alphaswap.io. This week, we're talking to Tariq Hamoodi. Hey, Tariq, thanks for being with us today. Can you give us some quick introduction on yourself?
Of course, King. Thanks for having me on. So I'm a former emerging markets credit and distressed trader / analyst. I'm now focused on illiquid credit, litigation finance, insolvency claims, and special situations investments more generally.
Cool. So can you share your investment style and philosophy with us?
Of course. Well, I think it's best described by looking for quirky stories that have lots of hair. And you know, generally I run by the principle there's nothing better than finding a diamond in the rough small cap stock.
Okay. So which stock are we going to talk about today? What's the trade? What's the upside downside? Any interesting context? We'd love to learn everything about it.
So today we're going to focus on Kingsgate Consolidated Limited, which is a Australian listed miner with assets in Thailand and Chile. It's a unique story as Kingsgate has a long storied history. Was formerly a multi-billion Aussie dollar market cap company and profitable gold miner that was caught wrong-footed with a high amount of balance sheet leverage during the downturn in precious metals prices in the post 2011 2012, and the company's family jewels are a high grade 120 to 140,000 ounce low cost gold mine in Thailand, which was actually expropriated from the company in 2016 via an executive order from the military dictator who came into power in 2014. So Kingsgate is a I suppose some would look at it and say it's a binary story, but there are very, very strong legal merits underpinning the value of the claim that they have brought against Thailand, which is also at a very, very short fuse. The arbitration process has progressed and is over a number of years and is drawing to a close. And what's interesting is, although a arbitration award is almost a surefire result to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars, whether US dollars or Aussie dollars, it appears that Kingsgate is actually involved or deep involved in settlement discussions with the Thai government, who are seeking to avoid a payout which would have very negative political implications. So the company is basically a de facto solvent liquidation because it has three assets: the Thai mine and arbitration claim, which we can chat more about, a Chilean silver development assets, which recently received environmental approvals, although it's unlikely the company will develop that asset themselves, and cash, and there's no debt. So it's a very, very easy to understand or easy to analyze story if you understand, of course, the value, the intrinsic value of the arbitration claim or the Thai mine. So today it's trading at a share price of around 80 Aussie cents per share, which is translates to a market cap of around 180 million Aussie dollar. I think that the company trades at a 50 to 75% discount to a worst case outcome for the claim. My best case outcome is around a 3x from here, or a range of 225 to 275 Aussie dollars per share, and my bull case is around 375 Aussie dollars. And I think the catalyst for the company to trade at these levels is a resolution of the legal dispute which they have with the Thai government, and that should happen at the very earliest in 1 month, and I expect at the very latest in 3 months.
Okay. Oh, very interesting trade. So if you think about, they have the three assets, so you can almost look at this as a sum of parts basis, right? So why do you think the market is even valuing the company at a big discount to your worst case?
That's a good question, and I think, look, this is a stock that's burned investors a number of times in the past. Bad acquisitions, high leverage at wrong point of the cycle, the Thai issues, etc. And it's predominantly a stock which is held by retail investors and with some passive real money shareholders who wrongfully do not trust management today. And so I think when you also bake in the fact that, value is really being driven by a legal outcome, which is tough for most market participants to really understand or analyze, I think, the is where you get that dislocation in what I perceive to be the intrinsic value of the stock versus the current trading price today. So, and again, I think, given that many would perceive the value of the claim as being binary and literally a zero or an unknown amount with no real understanding of how to value that asset, which I think there is, when in fact there's a lucrative settlement or handing it down of an arbitration award, which look like a surety and which should be a multiple of the current market cap. And I think the other thing to point out is that the arbitration hearings took place in February 2020, and generally these things take a 4-year period to resolve. So you can imagine the fatigue involved in all the headlines about settlement, and there's been many conflicts with the Thai government in between there, etc. So I think it's starting to pick up, I guess, traction again, given that that an outcome is nearby. And I think what's also interesting is that if anyone's been following the press, they've seen that the Thai government and monarchy is under pressure at the moment. And it was the current Thai prime minister who actually, through executive order, expropriated the asset from Kingsgate. And given his role in the saga, he's trying to settle with the company to avoid any political blowback. So I think, again, understanding what a settlement could look like is also very difficult for the market. I think it could end up being a broad suite of measures and benefits, ultimately leading to a sale of the asset to a buyer shortly thereafter.
Gotcha. And what do you think is sort of your most severe downside case on this one? Is it like another very long, drawn out process? Is it possible for this arbitration for the ruling to be extended?
So that's a good question. So again, back to the sum of the parts basis, or sum of the parts valuation analysis. So you've got around 25 million Aussie dollar of cash. You've got the Chilean asset, which has which was written down significantly last year to I think a 25 million Aussie dollar book value. There's been interest in that asset, so I think we can ascertain that, given the run up in silver price, et cetera, that, and without going into too much detail, that seems to be quite, a fair or realistic liquidation value of the asset. And that discards the fact that it's received environmental approvals and is shovel ready. So there's around, let's just call it 50 million Aussie dollars of value there. With the arbitration case itself and this idea of downside, it's one has to realize that an arbitration award is a near certainty, and it is a certainty because this claim was brought under the Thailand-Australia Free Trade Agreement, and under the terms of that agreement, one can expropriate an asset, but it requires fair compensation and actually following due process. Here, you had, without going through the Thai legal process, you had a dictator who effectively closed down the mine and caused Kingsgate great damage. At the time of closure, that mine was producing 80 million Aussie dollars of EBITDA / free cash flow, with a mine life of around 7 to 8 years left on the mine. So, again, gold was also at, I think, $1,200 at the time, and obviously there's been a big run up in precious metals prices. So if we just look at what an arbitration award could look like, and assume that there's many ways to value that asset, or for a tribunal to value that. It could be on a DCF basis, It could be on a book value or replacement cost basis. And in this case, the book value of that asset at the time was 600, 700 million Aussie. But I think if we go back to the discounted cash flow basis, and we assume, even if this is, even at a worst case, if this is, is valued at the time of taking or expropriation at 3 times free cash flow at 250 million Aussie dollars, that it's still a significant chunk of value, and more than covers the current valuation. People may also point out that yes, you receive an arbitration award, but then you actually have to enforce that against Thailand through international courts, etc. I do agree with that, and that's even why, if you assume that you haircut that in half and that you have a marketable credit asset which you could sell to a sophisticated hedge fund buyer, you take your 25 million or 20 million of cash, 30 million value of the Chilean asset, and let's say a 125 million Aussie dollar valuation of the claim on an absolute worst case basis, and you're more than covered from where we trade today. So I think if we take a base or optimistic case of what an arbitration award could look like, well, it's been reported that the company has actually made a claim for over 750 million US dollars, so around 1 billion Aussie dollars. So I'm not saying they're going to get there, but if you even end up landing somewhere in the middle, then this looks like a great investment.
Awesome. Sounds very interesting, Tariq. Thanks very much. So I'd love to usually end with a couple of general investment insights. 3 questions. Which resources do you use for your research? What's your favorite investment book? And thirdly, what's the most important investment lesson you want to share with our audience?
Sure, of course. So on the on my, I guess, the investment lessons, I think this one speaks to this. The lesson I'm going to say is to just be patient and disciplined. In a politically charged situation like this, there's lots of different headlines floating around, and it's obviously from sources which are should not be believed. And I think it's important to really diligence follow up on every headline that comes out, making sure you're looking at the right sources and not panicking. I think if I go back to what I've just mentioned about my burn down value of the asset, I think I've been very conservative in just focusing, and aside from settlement negotiations, etc., what is my worst case outcome, assuming an award here, and sticking to that, and of course, I think leading into the second point, which you asked, which sources do I use? Well, clearly this is a really unique situation, and I follow the Thai press regularly, and that involves using things like Google alerts and speaking to local journalists, local contacts, and I think what's becoming more important these days is actually forums and message boards. So I've formed some great relationships with some other like-minded, I'd say retail or high net worth type investors who should be on AlphaSwap, but we exchange lots of ideas and bounce ideas and things around off each other, because I find you'll find some people who know the politics well, and then you'll find a guy like me who knows the legal arbitration angle well, and then we've pulled in people who know the geology of the Chilean asset and the Thai asset. So I think it's a range of different sources, and really just depends on the occasion, really. I think other sources we use is to read through. I mean, the arbitration itself is actually confidential, but you can read the tea leaves in a sense of looking at the other cases which some of the arbitration tribunal or judges have actually handed down decisions on in the past, and these types of things to they won't answer any or give you any discrete outcomes, but they're a good way to get a better feel for particularly your upside case.
Makes total sense. And last one is any investment books you recommend?
Any investment books? Oh, I think I'd have to think it's the last time I actually read a book. I'd have to point to Seth Klarman's book, A Margin of Safety, which I think is clearly highly relevant here, because I think there's a wide margin of safety in this investment and where it's currently trading.
100% agree. Tariq, thanks very much. Fantastic trade and great insights. For anyone who would like to read more details, obviously available on alphaswap.io, along with a number of other investment ideas. Thank you all for listening and look forward to the next episode.